The cars aren't cheap to buy. A crashed, cheap Lamborghini is still $60,000. If you ever want that money back, you only have two choices. You either take it apart and sell the engine, transmission, and body panels individually, which when done right can be lucrative, or you fix it, which when done right can still not be lucrative. If you want to keep from being financially upside down in one of these projects, then you can't afford to spend a single cent on labor, like with our Bentley. And this even includes painting, which is considered the hardest part. A lot of work goes into painting, and very little of it is actually painting. Most of the time spent painting is actually spent setting up. We should call it setting upping. Without the right setup, you couldn't even consider painting. Painting really is a labor of love. But that labor has to be free, or else we'll be so invested in our Bentley project that in the end it may have been cheaper just to buy a Bentley from a dealer. With about $300 spent in painting supplies, we should get a pretty good finish in one day's work. Because our bumpers were all plastic, we're gonna start with a primer to give our paint something to stick to. Another step in painting that is not painting. Primer goes on super thick. I'd give you some tips on how to do it right if I knew how. Prepping the fender is a little bit different. It's already painted, which means it just needs to be sanded with one of these. 400 grit paper should be rough enough to give the paint something to stick to, but not so rough that it would show any bare metal. Also just rough enough to remove all of the scratches. Looks like it might rain. Did we actually make it to the main event? That's Bentley paint. It's called Beluga Black. Not after the whale, but after the bean. Volkswagen owns this color and calls it Volkswagen Black. But if you're buying their Bentley, they call it Beluga Black, just to make it a little bit more mysterious. Or maybe it's so they can charge more. With a Google search's understanding of how this is all supposed to work, I'm thinking 3 coats. Not a chance 1 coat is enough. 2 coats might work if you're really good. 3 coats is probably my sweet spot. And 4 coats is too many opportunities to mess this up. They should call it sweating. Pretty crazy how much credit the word painting gets in this whole process. I mean, that's it. It's painted, but we're not done. It is thundering outside, so we gotta go in. Because those things are 2 lightning rods, and I still have a mortgage. In my opinion, clear coating should get much more respect than painting. It's the last step in the process, and it's less forgiving. Once you start mixing clear coat, you get about an hour to finish the job. Otherwise, you start all over. Game on, just in time for severe thunder and lightning. Yahoo. Seriously, this weather is like trash right now. We're painting in it, or whatever I called it. Clear coat puts a mist in the air and it lands on your skin and on your clothes, ruining both of them if you allow it. That's why I put on my lucky suit. Water is the enemy of all things automotive painting, so I need to make sure that no water drips through these collections and that the tent is completely dry. It became very obvious very quickly that that was a losing battle against this storm, and our parts were already getting dripped on. I'll be able to dry them later, so the last thing I want to do is get struck by lightning for a $100 paint job. It's not worth dying, right? It's probably about 60 bucks worth of clear coat that I just wasted. We have to go get the parts out from under the tent before something bad happens, but this gun has to be cleaned first, or else the clear coat will dry inside and ruin it forever. It looks like something bad happened. Yep, something really bad happened. Let's see. We lost everything. Yep, the frame came down right on the fender. So we'll start over. I guess that really puts the nail in the coffin. Painting is not the hardest part in painting. The hardest part is, however, patience. In our case, patience for a day like this. I'm constantly paying for my impatience. 300 bucks this time, and the inconvenience. The inconvenience of having to refinish these parts. The tent came down hard on our fender. Although the bumper didn't get directly damaged by the tent, oh, you know what? Never mind. Yes, it did. Which means it too will need repair. Repair means more sandpaper and going 2 steps backwards. You can't paint on top of old paint because the black paint is too dry. Sanding the parts again will not only fix the scratches, but it'll also make the surface rough enough for another coat of paint to stick to it. You know, I am on some kind of streak because every single one of my paint jobs has required a second attempt. Though it might be more comparable to tennis. When you serve the ball in tennis and the ball hits the net, you get one do-over. If you hit the net 2 times in a row, well, by then we'd be out of paint, and we should probably quit tennis if that happens. Or maybe we could find somebody to play tennis for us. Practice makes perfect, right? Sure, I'm getting a lot of practice. Now, I'm not one to typically make excuses, but if you have a second while this paint sets up, I think I need a paint booth, like a real paint booth. Hey, look, a piece of grass in the paint. I actually have this really cool pair of tweezers. They sell them to people who don't paint real good. Although if you have to hold the camera and the tweezers, you'll likely just make the problem worse. Got it. I got a bit of deja vu. This is exactly how far we got last time. Let's try and keep from ruining our day today. I make no promises, and that makes for good content. What's bad for me is good for you. Lord, hear our prayer. Something wrong with the air compressor. Stakes are too high to play games today. What's going on here? Air regulator stinks. More excuses. I've learned that if you don't have high enough air pressure coming out of the gun, you end up making more excuses. Ow. This is the way paint jobs turn out when you're patient. And ideally, this will wrap up our Bentley's bodywork needs. Right on cue, though, this fly has other plans. We can finally say it out loud. We got a really nice paint job. The bumper and the fenders really looking good. I don't know about you guys, but I am exhausted. I'm gonna let these parts bake out in the sun for a while and go catch a breather.